Hello there, my name is Doc Conrad, and this is my little preamble to the podcast. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who is a part of this podcast, including all the guests and the two wonderful artists who help bring this podcast to life. At Meloscav, at MELOSCAV, created the icon for this podcast, and at Doidaflower, at DOIDUHFLOWER, is the artist behind the visuals on YouTube and other social media sites. If you'd like to keep up to date with the show, follow the show on Twitter at CommsOpenPodcast. For the fourth episode of Commissions Open, I interviewed my good friend Muzuiko. She's another talented artist who works in graphic design, traditional art, and is a booth artist at a local convention circuit. We talk in depth involved with all these topics, and she's just a general joy to talk with as well. You can give her a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Muzuiko. That's MUZUIKO. And as always, thank you so much for listening to the fourth episode of Commissions Open. Hello everybody and welcome back to Commissions Open, an interview podcast all about the art and the digital age. You can hear the process, stories, and lives of artists, voice actors, video creators, editors, musicians, and many other talented creators in the era of online work. I am your host, Doc Conrad, and today we have one of my oldest friends, I go ahead and say online, a fellow artist who does not only digital work, but also that of on sketching and on pen and paper. Muzuiko, aka Muzu, how are you today?
I am good. Hello, everybody.
All right, let me go ahead and quickly turn you up just a little bit, and there we go.
Okay, I don't want to be too quiet, but you don't want to make it too loud, because I yell so much.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, when we play League, you get heated. But like in this is casual time. This is conversation. Don't worry about it.
I'm loud in conversation. You know that. Yeah. I'm loud in passing. Have a conversation with me on the other side of the street, dude.
You're fine. You're fine. Okay. So before we get everything started, your online presence is mostly on Instagram. Is that right?
Yeah, it used to be on Tumblr, but certain things made me get off of Tumblr.
I heard there was a lot of Tumblr exodus going on. But I've followed your Instagram for quite a while. And some of your artwork I've absolutely loved. If you don't mind, I'd love to go ahead and like share that on screen and like some of your work.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah, appreciate that. A lot of what I would consider your artwork to be is that of fan art. Is that correct?
It definitely has become a lot more of fan art, but as I've gotten more into like going to conventions, because that's a lot what people want to see. It's been hard though with this anime season. I do a lot more like video game fan art at this point, and I've done some book stuff, but usually it's older anime or video game fan art.
No, that's actually going to be an interesting thing I'm going to want to talk about, especially convention artistry versus like just strictly online, because most of the people that I've had on the show have been online artists, but none of them have gone to conventions and set themselves up as like artists there. So I'd love to go and hear your perspective on that. But first, let me go ahead and read out my list of questions here.
Okay.
How would you directly describe this field of work to someone who is like, I don't know, like a family member or something like that?
Do you mean as in like going to conventions or just drawing in general?
I mean both. Like if you were to go ahead and like if your grandma or grandpa just came up to you and said like, what do you do? Then you would like, how would you describe yourself in that way?
Well, I guess it would not really like for my family. I've been drawing since I was old enough to like hold my head up. So like they are like, oh yeah, she's gonna draw. That's what my family is really sweet in that way. Like they pay attention to the things that people like in the family. So they are like, oh, I hope you're doing art, or if you're not doing art, you're not happy, are you, Darcy? I'm like, you're right, Grandma. But when it comes to like I meet new people or I get introduced to other people, And they say, well, what do you do? And I'm just like, well, I'm a graphic designer actually locally at a print shop, but I like to draw on, and then I post those online, and I do commissions for people over the internet. And a lot of people are like pretty understanding about it now. But I mean, I'm sure every single artist you've ever talked to has been like, art's not a career. And I'm like, what is it? Everything around you? What do you mean? Somebody has to make everything. And it's just like trying to explain to people graphic design has actually been harder than just like actual like just art.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while you'll see somebody who doesn't like watch any anime, and then that gets kind of weird. It's just like, what do you do? Like, you just sit around. You've only watched one TV show your whole life. That's weird. Like, so, cartoons for kids people aren't very often anymore. That used to be a big thing, but now it's like, oh, you draw? Man, I can't draw at all. And then that's the most of the conversation. You say, oh yeah, I price for just like, they're not like, so you probably charge like $500, and it's like, it's not a fine art painting. Oh, sorry, can I cuss? Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're pretty fine. You're
okay. Fine. I'm a bit of a sailor, so I don't want to do that if it's not okay.
You're good. If I ever get concerned with it, I can literally just like do a little like sound effect. That's fine. But it's funny.
Usually not hateful. It's usually just flavorful.
Yeah. It's like a spice. It's fine.
It's a punctuation to my important words.
I've known this about you. It's great.
But people would be like, oh, well, how much do you charge? And it's trying to explain that's more economical than like all of the fine artistry with the amount of time and the fact if you're doing it digitally, it's not like you have to buy a bunch of paint, and then you don't have to wait 5 years for your oil painting to dry, and like things like that. So, just usually people, if they don't understand it, they don't actually ask very many questions. But usually it's not too hard. A lot of people really like art, and people who don't like art is not usually people I have long conversations with.
If you don't like art, I tend not to talk to you too often.
Yeah, it's a weird thing if you don't like art or like don't listen to music at all. So I'm like, are you okay? Is everything all right at home?
Yeah, there's definitely some people who prefer like straight facts over this sort of thing, but I'll call them fuddy-duddies. That's the worst way to put it. Anyway, that was the stupidest thing to say. Let's go ahead and I want to talk about how you said that you first started doing art ever since you could lift your head.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it is you were like when I know your family probably saw this early on, but what was the point in which you recognized that you want to do this for like a long time?
I cannot even remember. I don't even remember. It was so long ago. Like it's been something that I've always wanted to do. When I was really little and like when you're first learning that like jobs are a thing, I was like, oh, my mom and dad have jobs and I like them, and so I want to do what they do. Yeah. But I was always drawing, and I just think that and then like as I held jobs, I was like, oh yeah, I always want to be an artist, right? And so it's something that's like an undercurrent. And then you think about it, and then you get your first job, and you're like, wow, this sucks. I really don't want to do this. And then I don't want to do this, and I want to do this. And I like graphic design. That's fun. I'm just not, like, at my job. It's local, so I just don't get a lot for the amount of effort I'm doing, I'm not getting a lot of, like, anything back. But I really like the job, and I really like the people I work with. But I like working with people. That's my favorite thing about, like, art, and why I really like commissions is usually there's a whole set of people, especially at conventions, who can't draw at all. And they come up to you, and they're going to give you money because they want you to take what's in their head and, like, bring it forward. And I knew that after a while, that was the thing that I liked. I wanted to be able to help people who couldn't do the thing that I could do and get them exactly what they wanted so they could see, like, directly from their mind's eye onto a piece of paper, and now it's physical and it's real and they have it. Like, that was when I decided, I was like, yeah, this is the way I want to do art. This is the way I want to be there for people. And I like to do my own stuff, but my favorite thing about art is doing that, which is really good for me. So it's very beneficial to making money. You like to do stuff for other people, but it's really my passion is about it, is that I love doing that for people. Okay. But I've known I've wanted to draw since I was like maybe 4, looking at all the books and illustrations. Actually, the legend, is it the Voyage of the Bassett? It's like, I can never remember his name because I'm horrible with names, but you already know that. It's Christopher, and he's one of the high fantasy artists. I love that book, and I actually don't own it currently, but I'm going to buy it. I think he died actually in 2019, and that made me very sad, but his art is so whimsical and so detailed, and I think that there's definitely you can see a lot of inspiration on more of my like sketching of the way that he structures his art, and I love it. The Voyage of the Bassett is an amazing fantasy book, just an illustration collection of a ship that just went around and it sees a bunch of fantasy creatures, and the illustrations on every page are just phenomenal.
Now, how I don't want to detract too far from it, but how I've never heard of this book. How old is that? Because you had that since you were a kid, you said?
I actually, like, I'd always been drawing because drawing was something that was, my mom, I think, she wanted to be like a music therapist, but she ended up being a nurse because she couldn't actually like hear different audio. Like, she couldn't tell when someone was like going ah, or that they're going ah. Like, she was having trouble differentiating. So she could play the flute though, which was wild. So she was like, I'll just become a nurse. But she always loved art, and so that was like a big thing. And I was homeschooled for a little while, so I was always doing art. The first time we moved, I went to the library, and I would just go around, and I loved history. So I would like look at like, big Smithsonian collection books and things like that. And then I was in like I don't even know if it was in the kids section or if it's just in like a high fantasy section. And I just found it in the cover and everything about it. And I must have been like 6 or 7 or something. So I was little. And it's like almost 20 years ago. And I just absolutely, I would check it out multiple, like I would go back, turn it in, and go and get it again. Can I check this out again? It's like, unless someone was waiting for it, they say yeah, and I'm like, okay, thanks. And just like try to keep the book forever. And I never talked to my parents about how much I like the book because they would have bought me one, but I never did. I was just like, I love this book. It's like I owned it from the library, kind of. Kid logic.
Basically, yeah. It was made in 1996. Like, that's when it was published. That's how old. Wow.
Oh, it's the same age as my brother.
Oh, wow.
I'm 1 year older than it. I could have had it my whole life. Dang.
Yeah, just about. Okay. So, that's a really cute story about hearing about how you were like, you really enjoyed it so much that you actually thought you owned it.
Yeah, kind of. It was weird. Little kid logic through things. So I just have to take it back and let them know that I still have the book. Like, that was it.
I just want to let you know that I still have this book, but I'm still keeping it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm still holding this, please.
Okay. All right. So your history from art has been like ever since you were young, and you've liked the collaborative process. And you were mentioning about how you actually really enjoy the commissioning process of like taking what people have and then like putting like it to paper or putting it digitally.
Yeah.
And you've also mentioned that you're someone who's gone to conventions and like done artist tables, and I'm guessing like showed off your different prints there. What are some of the people? What exactly is that like? Because I've never heard I've never heard of like how that process goes. I just know that when I go to conventions, I see artists that have a ton of fan art out. And that's really it. And I've never really like known about is it mostly just selling prints? Is it available for commissioning? What is that? What is that? What is setting up your table there and everything about it? I want to hear everything about it.
This is an exciting story also. So we have a local convention, and it's decently sized. You get like 1,000 people to come through, sometimes more. And I first went to that convention when I was a freshman in high school, and I did only commissions because I did not do any digital work at that time, which means that I was at a convention with a bunch of people who had their prints up, and I had a piece of paper and I had a computer to look some reference material up on, my sketch pad, and some inking stuff, and a little like banner that we had made that said I had commissions for like a horribly low price, which is fine now that I look at them. And I'm like, yeah, that is $3. That's a $3 chibi if I've ever seen one. It's not good, but I just did commissions, and I did that for a couple of years actually. Was I came and I only did commissions, which means for almost around like 12 hours, I drew all day. And then I ate lunch at the table and drew all day, which was fine when you don't have to like manage anything else. But this last convention, I actually had prints and other, like I had buttons and stuff, and I did Copic, Copic, Copic commissions, and that almost killed me. And I did them the same way I'd been doing it for years before, but because it takes so much more time, and I want everybody to have the amount of like level of love and they look good, I have a really high turnaround time on sketches. People have always said that about me. I can get like a completed idea out pretty fast, but when you add more steps into it, that slows everything down. So my rate was a lot slower, and it was a lot more work. But I think I made like $600 off commissions only, which was, but I'm never doing that again because I didn't get to be at the convention that year. I was in the hotel room drawing most of the day. But it's really fun. I have some pictures on my phone that I've just kept, and I hopefully will keep forever, of people who wanted themselves drawn and their poses, like it's their character they're cosplaying. And I had one which was a group of boys, and I think this was like their first convention, and their high school boy TM. They're having fun, and they're like, hey, could you draw us? And they struck a pose, and they said, and we also want to be writing a Charizard. And I was like, yeah, I can totally do that. And they were so hyped, and they got it, and they were so hyped, and then they had they had an argument about who got to actually keep the picture. Because there was only one, and I said, just come make copies of it. But, like, it's so fun. I have pictures of people doing, any sort of poses. I had, like, a Leona who had her sword up. And it's my favorite thing about it. There's some, like, I would be wrong to say I don't have any social anxiety, but I've always worked at the table with a friend, and recently it's been one of my friends who she actually also draws. And there's been creative differences, which just comes with, like, people wanting to have the table look one way and you want it to look another way, or she does textiles, so her stuff takes up more physical space, and then having to move everything around. But it was a lot easier to do that with her, and she's there and she understands it, and someone can manage. You have, like, a chance to walk away and go, like, get food or go cool off in, like, the hotel room and, like, chill for a second, or if, like, you doing a ton of commissions because you don't think very well, you're just doing all the commissions and crying. But and then my boyfriend Henry, he is a lifesaver too. Like, he is really good at managing things, so he'll make sure that, like, he worked all, like, the financial and making sure all the money was together, and he would, like, really do a good job. And he's been to a lot more conventions than me, because that was what he did in high schools. Just go to a bunch of, like, of the local, and then he would go to ASIN in Chicago every year for a long time. and that was so he knew a lot of what he wanted to do and what he'd seen going to a bunch of artist alleys and stuff like that. So it's really a good experience. I think that if it is a bit of an investment though. Hang on, let me actually backtrack real quick.
Yeah.
To be able to print, to get the display stuff, to look good but also be functional. You have like a lock box. You need to get a square, which the Squarespace that were like the card readers. Usually they're free, but then you need to like do enough research if you're gonna go to a bunch of conventions, like which one has like the better deal with, like they take a certain percentage off of all of your swipes, explaining to people about your prices, making sure your prices you're coming out with like actual money and not just like, oh, I made $2 over what it cost me to make this. So there's like some business aspect to it, but that also helps with like reaffirming that you're worth what you're worth. So like, and then going and seeing other people's art is always actually really one of the fun parts. It's like, it's so cool to see what everybody else around you is doing. And you can't be nervous because like people are so like, what if they don't like my art? There's so much other good stuff. It's like, people are gonna like your art, especially if like you have a character they like, or they just like your art style. It's wrong to go to a convention and think that you're not gonna sell anything because there's everybody else's there. That's just not the case. Everybody's gonna sell stuff, and because people aren't gonna just stay at one thing and buy a bunch of stuff there. Like, it's really reaffirming for like feeling good about drawing. People go there and like, I love this, and they're so excited, and they the one thing is sometimes people want to talk to you, but you have like a little booth, so you're like, I can't talk to you right now. We gotta use the like clot up the whole way that it goes, because if you've gone to conventions, you know how it's like a kind of like a little circulation, it's like a circuit almost, so you have to go around it, and if somebody stops, then it's like, well, I can't really go to this table because like 8 people in front of it.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. So that's the hardest thing for me, is trying to stop talking to people and get them to move along, because I don't want to be mean at all, and I don't want them to feel hurt at all. But it's definitely like, you will see me later. This convention doesn't end when the artist alley closes. Like, I'll talk to you a little later, or you can talk to me tomorrow. But it's hard to do that. But pricing, knowing what you're going to sell and things like that. There's an investment that comes to doing like charms. Buttons is not a big investment because you can get a button press, and that's pretty fast. You get a hole punch and stuff. That's like a pretty cheap investment. But anything that needs to be printed, usually at a third party, can become pretty expensive. But I think a lot of Kickstarters and stuff, that seems to work pretty well for a lot of people, helping them reach their goals.
Okay. A lot of your so there are some differences between, like, of course, like you mentioned, the physical work of like the physical products that you have, as opposed to just like taking commissions and all that and how much of your how much of it is, like, if you could think of it like in a business sort of sense, how much of what you've made is from those like physical products versus like commissions versus prints and stuff like that?
I would say that the most money I've made would be physical commissions. So I was at conventions, and that's the most money I'll make in like a general setting. I've actually recently started making more money on commissions digitally, which has been really cool. And I've done digital art for a while, but not really like the digital, like that's kind of new for me. So I'm still trying to transfer my physical style to my digital. So it's a lot of thank you to everybody who commissions me digitally because I'm not quite satisfied with it yet, but I'm so thankful for it. But I haven't actually sold that many prints. I had a Kirby Air Ride print, and because I wasn't up to date in our convention, our local convention, which was the first convention I actually had a lot of prints at. is really more up to date on current pop culture and anime, and I was not at that point. Not at all. I didn't have anything for that. I had a Midna poster. I had a Kirby Air Ride. I had a Pokemon Moving Company poster, and I had I had a Samurai Champloo poster. So I I was very niche. And I had Super Smash Brothers buttons though. So, but those went well.
Yeah.
People liked those. But that was what I had mostly.
So how important is it to go ahead and keep up on the trends of like the latest stuff in order to like sell your in order to get like big sales? Because like you said, you were a niche artist. Like how were there a lot more? Would you get? Do you think you'd get a lot more sales from that if you'd stayed like true to if you basically stated like, here are all the modern animes, here's it in my style?
I think if I had had a bunch of like Boku no Hero, I would have sold like quite a few prints. I sold my prints, but it was mostly the Kirby Air Ride one. That was someone being like, "Oh, yes, Kirby Air Ride." They just bought that. But I mean that, and then some of like, I live in the Midwest, so as edgy as you can possibly be and getting like cool edgy stuff, that's always really cool too. So if I had done some of that and the Boku no Hero, I think that that's really important to selling prints at a convention. I think that you have, and sometimes that's hard because if you don't really care, it's hard to invest something to make a good quality picture out of it, because you're like, I don't fucking care about this. Whatever, I'll just get it done. And it doesn't look good, or you don't want to do it, so it's hard to start it. So trying to find and like actually like the shows is something important. So like I did like Boku no Hero, I just hadn't drawn anything for it. Because I actually didn't draw a lot of fan art before that. A lot of the stuff I did was original art. I feel like, there's like an influx of fan art pretty quickly from me working at that convention. And a lot of my fan art was done just usually from commissions. But I didn't sell a lot of my prints, and that kind of sucked. But also, I was like, I'm going to get better at making prints, and I need to be better about understanding what people want to see. Or you can pick conventions that are actually more niche. So if you go to a gaming convention, you can I could just do Darkstalkers and Capcom. Like, I could just that's it. I'm a Capcom booth.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's all I am. Which would be fine by me. I would live in that life. Yeah. But if with, like, my local convention, I needed to be a little bit more on the up and up and understand what was popular in the trend right now. Because it's like a baby starter convention. So it's people who are just, like, they're into this season is the first time they've gotten into anime. It's usually a lot younger. There's, like, older people that come. But it's usually, I would say, like, early high school is like makes up like a large chunk of ours. So it's people who are new and they haven't seen like all of the classics. Like they don't know what Cowboy Bebop is because they didn't watch Toonami. They don't know what's going on. And I mean, that is fine, I guess. You're missing out on Samurai Champloo, but that's fine. But it's definitely important to wanting to sell a lot at very general conventions. I think it's important.
All right, so we talked a bit about like the process of like conventions and all that. A little bit more of a niche topic, and probably one of my last questions about this specifically. In terms of like getting yourself a booth at the Artist Alley, like how do you end up going about that? Do you just like contact the convention owner and state you want it, and they like set a small price for you to go ahead and like set yourself up there, or what's the deal?
I think that depends on convention to convention. Like, I think maybe that's kind of how it goes on one-day conventions, where sometimes there's one-day conventions where you just show up and you kind of like sign in, and there's like it's basically almost like a flea market almost. But a lot of the times with the conventions I go to, there's websites, and you have to apply like you're applying to get into anything. You need your name, what you're going to be selling, the products. Are you going to have another person at your table? What size table are you going to want? Because they usually provide tables. Do you need electricity? Because they will provide you that sometimes as a charge. So they need to put you next to an outlet or something like that, or get you an extension cord. They will. Then they put you in for either sometimes it's like a blind raffle. Sometimes it's picked. So they'll go through. You actually also put in your websites. They don't actually, and I think this is like not great of the convention people, but I understand kind of why. They don't actually want you to use social media. You need to make in your like little gallery or have a website to post all your art on it so that they look at it that way, because the reasoning they say for not having like Instagram, even though that's kind of what Instagram is like a gallery, is because they can say that it's easy to make it not your art. And I was like, well, it seems kind of shady, because if it's the art, and then like not your art, you're going to notice. It's going to look completely different. But I understand kind of where that is, but I don't understand what stops me from doing that on amateur. Yeah. But that is the one thing, is if you, apparently that'll help, is not having, linking your portfolio, like linking a website, actually, not just like a social media. Okay. I don't agree with that, but that's what they do. And so they'll have like a jury that will pick, and then they will have a backup. So you don't get in. If you don't get in the first round, you're now on like the reserves. And if someone can't make it, or someone cancels, or someone doesn't pay their deposit, so you usually will pay like a deposit, or you'll pay to have the table. So the table is like the table, and it's mostly, because you get to go to the convention, you'll get usually 2 badges for the full weekend, and you get those, and that's all together. So you get to go there and sell. So you have to think about that too. That's a bit of an investment. You need to make over how much it costs you to actually go to the convention. Some conventions, like ASIN, which is big, I think last year or 2 years ago, somebody's display fell on somebody. And they didn't get hurt bad, I don't think. But now you have to buy insurance through the convention, which is like $90 extra on top of how expensive the tables are. So a lot of people were like, "What? We're not vendors. We're local artists. Like, we don't pay this much money we don't have insurance like that." So that's new. But usually there's like an application process, and you just need to go and check on like certain conventions you want to go to. They'll come up and they'll say, we're pre-registering, and so you can go and you'll put in, and they have like cutoff dates usually. So say you can, it's all the way through October and November, and then on the cutoff dates on December, you can't apply anymore. And then they usually will let you know in like the next 2 months if you got in, and then 2 months from there. Usually they try to give you more time if you're a reserve and they call you up, but I've been called up before and it was like the month of. And I'm like, I wasn't planning this at all. There's not a lot of time, but it's the most important thing I'd say is find the conventions you want to go to, check the websites, see when the pre-registration's open, get in on that, and then once you have your email and everything set up, you just wait, and it goes from there. And the more conventions you go to and the better online presence you have with like your portfolio, it's a lot easier. And I would say that usually when you go to a convention, they'll have you come back, but my local convention didn't actually have me come back this year. Which was wild, because I've been there we're in a bigger area now too, and I'm within walking distance at this point. So I was like, okay. But that happens too. But usually a lot of the other conventions, you get to go multiple times because they have a good track record with you. You show up, you do what you're supposed to do, not a problem. and they can showcase your art because they like it. But usually they have a jury, and they won't. There's not a whole bunch of con politics, but that can happen, and it's best to just not say anything.
Yeah.
It's just everybody's an individual, and that's fine. But you can be heard about it in silence, and safety of your own home. Don't say anything about it because people will get really mad.
So con politics is actually a thing. Wow, I've never.
Oh my gosh, it's like super dramatic actually. Because there's Facebook groups. Once you go to a convention, you can get in with like I'm actually in the item shop Guild of Merchants, and they will like do a lot of legwork. They'll tell you if they'll say we went to this convention, and then everybody will say how much they liked it or if it wasn't run well, so it's not worth going to. Did they have any problems and things like that? So, or how much they liked it or what people were like more for. Did they want actual items like the little like woodcut carving things, or did they want jewelry, or did they want prints or things like that? And then they'll say, hey, this convention is coming up soon, and they'll actually like post the link to like signing up for the convention. So it's good to go in and get with like groups like that so you can get in, because those things are super helpful, and it's like artists supporting artists, and it's great. I'm always about that. But con politics, like, it's I didn't really believe in it because I kind of just like keep my head down, and I'm a bit oblivious, maybe a little look like I'm not paying a bunch of attention all the time. That's the kind of air I give off, apparently. It's not saying that I am that, but maybe I am. And just some, like, every once in a while something dramatic will happen and somebody will, like, run by you and say some happening. You're like, what? With this, we're a bunch of nerds. This can't be happening. This is movie level drama. So, it's the creative minds of creative people, I guess. It's wild.
it's a bunch of socially how I like to describe conventions is a group of socially inept people finally get together.
Yes, and yeah, and gosh darn, you just gotta love them, right? Bless their heart, right?
Bless their heart.
Bless their heart. But shut the up. Like I'm like, it's like, this isn't about you. I promise. We're all socially awkward here.
Yeah,
it's not personal.
That's the majority of conventions. I should know. I go to them a lot. I've been in that crowd. I know what it's like to see like the odds and ends of people further on the social anxiety and like social inept platform going off and doing their weird things that they think are fully appropriate. Like a while back, remember? I don't know if you were here for this. I know I wasn't, but for the
Let's just
yaoi
talk about
paddles,
yaoi paddles. Yeah, yaoi paddles. Oh my god. Or
that was like
glomping.
Glomping.
Like,
yeah, that was just a
glomping
thing.
cosplayers. Like,
yeah.
Because I was a Vocaloid one time, and that happened to me a bunch. I was, and then I wasn't really big into going to the raves because I'm like, I don't want to go stand in a dark room with a bunch of people who don't know how to dance. Was mostly what I wanted to do. But I was also like, at that time, I was like, I'm tired, I'm going to go lay down. But like the raves I've been into a few of them, and I'm like, this is a lot. There's a lot of things happening right now. I'm not okay with, but the yaoi paddles, glomping, there's a lot of like waist touching and like tickling. Yeah. Like that was a big thing too. I don't know what they call. I don't know if they called it anything, but it was just like to scare you. Like that was the main thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like you just see how high up you could jump.
Oh yeah, that
Hetalia cosplayers for a while. That was a bit of a problem.
Just the cosplayers.
It was mostly the Homestuck. Actually, it was the Homestuck people for me. Like that was a bigger problem. I'm like a huge history nerd, and so like I actually have absolutely no shame. I loved Hetalia, but I wasn't like I knew enough about history to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be Germany. Like no, no, I'm not gonna be Germany. Especially I'm not gonna be Germany in his outfit in America. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
It's like that. So sometimes they would just be like straight up, basically cosplaying blonde Nazis. Like that was it. And then just being like extremely inappropriate. Like
Wow.
I was at a convention where there was a bunch of Homestuck cosplayers being doing the Pocky game,
Yeah.
but like the Pocky game after hours. Like
my
that's how it
goodness.
was. And I was like, y'all are children. Stop, you get your gray paint everywhere. Like,
Oh, that is
stop.
disgusting. That is disgusting. I don't know if I'm gonna keep that. I'm kidding.
It's wild. Well, I'm just like saying like all over other people's costumes too, because they would come up and they want to hug, because like that's the biggest thing is like hugging people at conventions.
Yeah.
And that's still a big thing from what I can tell. Which is fine. Hugs are nice, and that gray paint, if it's not set, it just gets on people's cosplays.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Pocky game, just being loud and obnoxious and just trying to like be too much in character, in the setting that you're in, that didn't that wasn't very good. We actually had really respectful furries that aren't just wild and out.
Yeah.
They're just like, they're here and they're fun and they've got their one person with them to guide them while they have their fursuit on.
Yeah.
Because they can't see. And I'm just like, oh, I love this.
It's like an actual dog. Yeah.
It feels
He
like I'm
doesn't know where
going to
it's
Disney
going.
World, actually. They got like the handler for Mickey Mouse. I'm like, yeah.
This is basically these conventions are budget Disney World. I fully get that.
Yeah, they got enough
Think about
furries at them, they are.
Yeah. Okay, all right. That was a really good talk. That was a really good talk about conventions. But the main thing that I want to focus on is your artwork and the work that you've done and the commissions that you've done in the past, because a lot of this focus on this show is a lot about you as an artist. And while that was a good topic to go ahead and discuss, because I think it's very important for people to realize like what it's very important for people to realize like what being a convention artist is like. Compared to like regular traditional just on the internet, taking commissions that way. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the like more focused on your art. So you've done you stated earlier that you do a lot of things involving with Capcom. Is that right?
Yeah, I really like Capcom.
What are some of the things that you've like? What are some of the things you've drawn, and why did you go ahead and like love that sort of art style? I'd love to hear more about that.
I'm having a really bad episode of me just not. Well, you know what? I'm never good at names, so. There is an artist at Capcom, and there's two of them, but the main one I think is Bebas. And the way that they draw, is my whole life. There's actually also an artist who really emulates that style too. And he's on Instagram, and I can only ever find him on Instagram. I have a Twitter, I'm just not very good about using it. But on Instagram, his name is Andrew Cockroach, and he is, I think, a concept artist, and he works in video games. And his art style is a very good representation of what it's like to absolutely love the Capcom artist. Bebas, I think. Sorry. And I absolutely adore Andrew Cockroach too. The thing that made me really like it, and I don't actually really even got to play a lot of fighting games, but the character design of fighting game characters, and specifically Capcom characters, and the love that went into like sprite animation, and then the love that went into the artwork, and just the campy nature of Capcom, I love. My favorite game series is probably Darkstalkers. So you get Morgan, Senko, Felicia, and a lot of others like BB Hood, John Talbane. I just love them. I love them. I think that it's such a fun concept. It's such a goofy thing that's happening a lot of the time with like a bunch of animation. Senko is my favorite. But I'm a sucker with like a cute girl with like big arms, like big arm, like even if it's like an armature or like a battle suit. I just think that that's really cool silhouette. It cuts a really nice silhouette. And she's just interesting. And I think it's like Jiangxi, the hopping vampires. Those are just odd in concept, and they're so far removed from like Western like horror that it's such an interesting concept. Her animations and her fighting in the fighting game, and I think she's in Marvel and versus Capcom 3. I just love her all of the things about her. Her idol animation is horrifying. It looks so scary, and she's just so cute. But she's my favorite. Felicia is also like, she's a nun that is a cat lady and loves to help orphans, and she's the U.S. character in that game, I think.
Really?
Which is like, okay, sure, she can turn into a cat, I think. And what is a cat with like one piece of blue hair? I'm just like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I love the character that goes into all of their drawings. Like, I think it's so cheeky and funny, and it's got so much personality. So I don't know if I have all of my pictures on there. I actually have a few. I tried to save some of them so I could send them to you, because I'm not always super good about posting them, because sometimes with like Instagram it cuts down the picture, and then I'm like, well, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
But I'm actually really unsure. Apparently, I'm horrible at keeping up to date with what I've got going on. Apparently.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Another artist I really, really like is Yoshitaki Amano from Final Fantasy.
So you'd say that those are like some of your main inspirations?
I would say yes. I would definitely say Capcom is really heavy for the way that it's like the goal of what I would like to be heavily influenced. I think I definitely am heavily influenced by it. And then Yoshitaki Amano is actually a lot closer and has like a lot of things like one of my traditional. I draw very, very sketchy. A lot of like throughout all of my time and like when I went to school and stuff, and like in all my art classes, I had a lot of people tell me I had a really sketchy artwork, and the teachers, I had a couple of teachers who really hated that. They didn't like that you could see every incomplete like line and how all these lines group together. And for a while I was really embarrassed about it. But now it's like it's so heavily one of my like art styles that it's I need to be better about actually bringing that into my digital art, because you can take a lot more time in digital art trying to like clean up your line art, and I need to not do that. And Yoshitaki Amano looks like he puts every single line on that page stays there, and it has a purpose. And it creates like motion or shape, or it helps like it'll make like a character look scary through just having like excess lines. Like it doesn't have to be so distinct. Like it doesn't have to be so finished looking, and it creates such like a overwhelming presence. I really like his art. It's been nice. It's helped me feel a lot better.
I'm looking at, I believe this is him right here. Yeah, he he came into prominence in the 1960s working on the late anime adaptation of Speed Racer. Is this the guy?
Oh, Yoshitaka. It's Yoshitaka, sorry.
Yoshitaka, yeah.
Amano.
Known for his commissioned illustrations for the popular video game Final Fantasy. Okay, yeah. I'm looking at his art right now. I could totally see how that influence is coming in, especially from like his base sketches. Yeah, there's like a lot of things that are like, wow.
His use of shadows is phenomenal. I want to be better about that, but he's got it's got like an Art Nouveau kind of face thing going on. It's still very anime, but it's got so much high fashion to it. It's so beautiful.
I definitely think he also has like some points, at least from it, at least from how I saw it, sort of like not so much a base digital painting of like not digital, I'm sorry, and not so much a base like sketch like art from just like a white background, but he also uses like different colors for the background as well, so it feels more intentional with all those like different lines, rather than how you think with a typical sketchbook where it is the lines come in from just a white background and feel like they're imperfections.
everything looks like it has a purpose.
Yes.
And it's very cool. It's very cool that you could have so many lines and think that, like, oh yeah, he put those there on purpose. Mm-hmm. It was just like he was just in the middle of doing. If you've ever, he has some videos of him drawing like characters alive, and it's really a lot of like how I actually draw when I'm like sketching and how I'm and the way that I feel about it, and it's so fun to watch to see him just like, now it's a picture, just immediately. Mm-hmm. There's a use of just like shape, really, is what he's doing. He's just he's cutting out an illustration from the paper. It's just really cool. It's a really cool person.
Yeah. And I could definitely go ahead and see some of that art, especially in your physical work. But moving on to your more recent ones that you've at least posted on Instagram, you have Morgana, which I fucking love, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I love that art piece. I love the little chains coming off of it, the attention to detail on the feathers, the background, like how she looks. She looks like, yeah, she because normally how her ult works is she just, if you've seen like at least her old base model, she literally just like screams then like all of it goes out. But she looks like she's like dancing, and I love that. I love this sort of like way you've done it. Yeah, you've got some. You just have. I just really love your attention to details, and also some of the rough edges you have on your physical works. I love both of them, and then I know you want to go ahead and bring that sort of style into your digital work, and I think that could definitely like work out really well, especially because you had a lot of details with working on it. Mm-hmm. But I really do love, like, I also love how your art style, like, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I love your clean art style as well. Don't go ahead and think that just because you see it as you see that first bit doesn't mean that your other bit isn't really good.
That means a lot to me too, because I feel so nervous about my digital art right now.
No. What I want to say is that your digital art is also incredible, along with your sketching art, and I think that the different art styles from it is you can definitely see it. You can definitely see that you have different styles between each, but your digital art style is really good, if not almost on par with your like physical sketching style. And I think that the work that you put into them is very good.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah,
that means a lot.
Of course, yeah. It's just literally like a different stylistic choice. That's how I feel at this point. Like, and you know, from your teacher's perspective, you know, they've seen like, oh, you shouldn't go and have this many things because it's meant to be like, those things are meant to be like imperfections that you're supposed to clean up and see in a final product, and it's seen like a big reveal at the very end when you finally do it, and they have a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
But if it being your art style and you work around it and you work on it well, then it should be a thing that you go ahead and be proud of and focus on. Yeah, I just want to go ahead and say that, like, not only your digital art style, while different, is still very quality. So, yeah.
That makes me feel really nice. Thank you so much.
It's not just nice. It's actually the truth. So, yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to probably one of the last few topics, because we started this call a little bit later than like what we wanted. But let's go ahead and see here. So this is a question I'd love to go ahead and ask about anyone. I've heard stories from like art theft to people just like not paying commissions to whatever. I want to hear like some horror stories that you've had in terms of like your work that you've wanted to like get off your chest but haven't been able to go ahead and like talk about.
Actually, I haven't had that at all.
You've not?
No, I actually had actually ghosted somebody on accident one time, and now I have too much anxiety to go back. There was one. That's the biggest thing is I'm the worst part of that commission. Is I was very, very sick for about 2 months, and they commissioned me at the beginning of that, and they didn't pay or anything, and they weren't actually gonna pay until a little bit later. And it's a D&D group, and I've done a bunch of stuff for them. And I was like, I actually don't feel good enough. And I got back to them later, and I still wasn't good. And then now I'm at this point, I'm in like that limbo where you're like, what do I do? I need to email them back. It's just deeply apologize, but I don't even have the art to like apologize with, because I don't even remember what I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Was it more of a conversation that you've like had?
I really like them too, so I'm mostly really embarrassed about it, and that's on me, and I'm just so embarrassed about it. But most of like anything that I've done, I'm pretty strict, and that comes from, I think, being a graphic designer and having to work with people all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, I work at my job, I help create logos for like local businesses, and I need to make forms and do all this stuff, so I'm constantly emailing people. So whenever I start a commission, I'm like, you pay me now. Mm-hmm. Unless you have like a really good repertoire with me, then I'm like, okay, you can pay me half and half or later. Yeah. Once it's done, depending on the size of the project. If it's like really time consuming, I will be like, you pay me half and then half when it's done. Or if it's really time consuming, sometimes I'm like, you have to pay it all up front. Because you have to pay for my time. Yeah. But it's not like, I never try to come across as like being mean about it, and I don't think, because I want to create something for people, and I think that there shouldn't be any confusion, and I know that sometimes I can get kind of like absent-minded, not oblivious, but and I try to make sure I'm covering all my bases, and I'll always ask them what they want to see, what's going on, and I always say, I try to actually also send like mock-ups quickly. So not quickly, consistently. So I'll be like, here is how it's going. Because usually people actually really like to see that. Here's where I'm at on your project right now. And I just want to let you know what's going on and things like that. I pretty much, if someone's like a little bit too much, I will just be like, I cannot do that for you right now. And I've had a few of that where people are just kind of like not, like, and that comes from, once again, I think, the graphic design. People who don't want to pay, I almost will not draw for. If they don't want to pay a reasonable amount of money for it. Because I'm like, right now you're paying me $2 an hour. If it takes me 2 hours, I got $4. Like, that's not going to work. Yeah. Like, I can't live off of that. I can't buy anything useful. Like, I can't pay the Adobe subscription. It's not going to work. But, so, it's just, like, the biggest thing is treating everybody like they're people. And if they're rude, then it's like, oh, okay, that's wild of you. But I haven't had too many of that. Which I'd say I'm pretty lucky, and I think that comes from a lot of doing things in conventions and seeing people in person. I've done a lot of things for people in person. One of the biggest things I always do is actually our local Smash group from our, like, they do, like, Smashville and things like that. I do their power ranking every 3 months. So I've always done that, and that's never been a issue either, and that's a really big project. I've never had anybody be a pain in my Oh, actually, sorry. 1 second. I did have somebody change the eye color one time 4 separate times when I asked them early on several times to tell me what the eye color was. But it was like a really minor fix, but it was like, it was peevish. I was annoyed, but that was like, that's literally the worst thing I've ever had happen.
Do you think that you've ever had like those are like major things that you've had like commission wise? Has that been online mostly? All those like issues that you've had? At least the small ones you've had.
Yeah, they would be online. I know that there was a commission that I drew at a convention because I will draw an SFW words. I will draw that. And I had originally forgotten to get their ID, but it worked out fine. So I was like, oops. But that worked out okay. So I got that.
Okay, so you like afterwards you like canceled it because you realized that like.
No, it ended up being okay. Like I'd already drawn it, so I was like, I actually need to see your ID.
Oh,
So
okay.
they gave me their ID, and I was like, fine.
So you accepted the commission and not before seeing their ID, and
Yeah.
then afterwards you found out like, oh, they were over 18, so it didn't matter. But
Yeah.
you were worried about it. Okay.
Yeah, and I had the ability to give them like their money back. Actually, I don't know if I took money for. I don't actually think with I only had gotten one NSFW, and I said that you pay me later because of what it is. And I think I actually did that one digitally in the hotel room and was able to email it to them. So that was a good deal because I was nervous at the end of that. I was like, wait. Oh my gosh, I forgot these rules. I think a total tart. I was like, oh no, I'm so dumb. But that was just a learning experience because it's drawing not safe for work art was like kind of new for me. Like trying to sell it. Like I actually, sorry about this. That Morgana has a not safe for work version.
Oh.
And I'm just actually trying to save up for a Patreon.
Ooh.
So, I actually think that not safe for work Morgana looks better.
You can follow Muzuiko on Instagram at Muzuiko. Do you have any other social media platforms that you're on right now?
I have Twitter.
Oh, Twitter.
I have Twitter.
Okay.
It's at Muzuiko again, so it's the same thing.
At Muzuiko. Muzuiko. That's for the audio listeners, just for that. But you'll have your name in the top of the description, at least like in the episode title. But I think we're about to go ahead and start wrapping it up. Is there anything you want to go ahead and say to everybody out there?
I think that you should keep drawing. It's very basic. And you should love what you do, no matter what it is. That's the most important thing. Is if you gotta finding the passion and believing in yourself, makes everything much smoother. And if you're finding that you're having trouble believing in yourself, work on that and figure out how you can start being happy with yourself, because your art will just grow so much from there. Because it's your health is important, and creating beautiful art comes from that. That's what I gotta say.
That's sweet. I love that. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Muzu. I appreciate that so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Commissions Open. If you would, please follow this podcast on whatever app you use. I would most definitely appreciate it. If you're just listening, that's perfectly fine. However, if you'd like, you can also watch this podcast on YouTube to see a custom commission every episode for each guest I have on, as well as to see the wonderful podcast set. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Comms Open Podcast. That's COMS Open Podcast on Twitter. Finally, you can follow today's guest Muzu on Twitter and Instagram at Muzuiko. That's Muzuiko on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.